Joining me today, I am thrilled to have Dr. Gerry Bowler. He is a retired professor from here in Winnipeg, but also a Canadian historian specializing in the history of Christmas. Thank you, Dr. Gerry, for joining us.
Happy to be here.
So many people have heard of the tale of Santa Claus, of course, but could you please share with us the real story of the man known as St. Nicholas?
Yes. Um, though the names St. Nick and St. Nicholas and Santa are often confused, they are two separate people. We can consider Santa Claus a descendant of St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas was, we think, a real bishop um, around the year 300. And that was a time in which Christianity was still being persecuted. And in the underground Christian church, Nicholas was a bishop in what's now Turkey, but which was then part of the Eastern Roman Empire. He was the bishop of Myra, Myra, a little town in the southwest of Anatolia. And he was persecuted. And after the Emperor Constantine had made Christianity legal, he attended the Great Council of Nicaea in 325. Now, this was one of the most important meetings in the history of Christianity. The emperor had summoned it in order to solve a problem. And the problem was, how much of God was Jesus? How could you maintain the notion of monotheism and still have Jesus as God? Well, there were two approaches. The first, the simplest, was by a Christian priest from Alexandria named Arius. And his solution was to say Jesus was great, worthy to be worshipped, but not God, a creation of God, a sort of maybe a super angel, if you like. The other position was the one advanced by Athanasius, who said that Jesus, God the Son, was of the same substance as God the Father. And so we can call this the Trinitarian solution. So big meeting, Council of Nicaea 325, it comes out in favor of the Trinitarian position, but in terms of St. Nicholas's participation, he's famous for having slugged Arius on the nose. And he was rebuked for his bad behavior, but to this day, you'll see memes on the internet of St. Nicholas slugging somebody and saying, I'm here to slap heretics and hand out presents, and I've run out of presents. So anyway, Nicholas is famous for his charity. And when he dies on December 6th, which thus becomes his saint's day, he is eventually venerated as a saint, and astonishing tales grow up about his miracles. He's not just a good guy, he's a miraculously good guy. So probably the most famous story to modern ears about St. Nicholas is his dropping of gold purses into the stockings of three young women who were in danger of being sold into prostitution. And this is the origin of the concept of a secret midnight Christmas season gift bringer. So we attribute Santa's secrecy and his use of stockings to this original story about St. Nicholas. Well, that's very nice. He's a nice guy, clearly, but more important to the Middle Ages was his ability to perform miracles. St. Nicholas could appear instantly and in more than one place at a time. So he could be in Constantinople and then appear suddenly at the trial of three unjustly accused men. So again, this notion of what we call translocation appears in the Santa Claus legend. Santa Claus can do all kinds of miraculous things in the course of a single night. He can also fly. St. Nicholas was often portrayed throughout the Middle Ages as flying over the sea to rescue sailors. And thus he became the patron saint of sailors, which was a huge occupation in the Middle Ages. So we can see that St. Nicholas is getting a lot of credit for the things that he looks after. Probably the story that appealed most to the Middle Ages was his resurrection of three students. And the story goes that three students were on their way to school and stopped off at an inn, and the innkeeper murdered them, chopped their bodies up, put them in barrels, later to be served to the inn's hungry customers. Well, St. Nicholas came along, sensed something was wrong, took the innkeeper down to the basement where the barrels were, and resurrected the three boys. So the symbol of St. Nicholas that you will see very, very often in the Middle Ages is three boys popping out of a tub. I was in a cathedral in Belgium, and I'm just walking along, and I see, oh, yeah, there's three boys poking out of a tub. St. Nicholas must be around, and sure enough, St. Nicholas images started appearing in that end of the cathedral. So that's why he is the patron saint of children. So by the year 1000, let's say, St. Nicholas is the most popular saint in heaven next to the Virgin Mary. He's certainly the most popular male saint. There are hundreds and hundreds of churches dedicated to St. Nicholas. He's the patron saint of just about everything you could name, lots of countries, barrel makers, pickle makers, perfume makers, thieves, Russia, Greece, Scotland. It just enormously popular. But he hadn't yet become the secret midnight gift bringer. And that seems to have happened. We're not sure. I would give great sums of money to be able to track this moment in time down. But sometime around 1200, someone, probably nuns, started putting little gifts in the shoes of the children they looked after on the eve of St. Nicholas Day. And they said to the children, well, look, somebody left an apple or a piece of candy in your shoe. That must be St. Nicholas. What a guy. So from around 1200, St. Nicholas just explodes in popularity as this mysterious Christmas time gift bringer. Now, note that it was not December 25th or December 24th when the gifts come. It's on St. Nicholas Day. But Christmas is a season. It lasts over 2 months on the church calendar. So for hundreds of years, you've got kids praying to St. Nicholas. You've got families threatening kids that St. Nicholas will not bring anything. In fact, might bring a whip or a switch to thrash bad kids with. So he's got a monopoly on this for several hundred years until the 1500s, when Martin Luther and the boys, Protestantism, abolished the cult of saints. So out goes St. Nicholas. Very reluctantly, even Luther kept observing St. Nicholas Day. We know that he gave his kids St. Nicholas presents, and he talked about bad kids getting horse manure in their stockings instead of treats. But Protestants begin to suggest that Christmas gifts come from the baby Jesus, or as you say in German, das Christkindl, the Christ child. Well, okay, so in Protestant countries, St. Nicholas gradually disappears. The only place that Protestants hang on to him is the Netherlands. So just keep an ear on that one, because we'll come back to that in a second. The problem with the Christ child as a gift bringer is that he can't carry anything, so he can't carry presents for good little girls and boys, and he can't carry a switch to beat them with, or a basket to take bad kids away in. So the Christ child gets scary helpers. Christ child will appear with somebody dressed in furs, or with a dirty face, with a switch or some chains or a basket in his hand to frighten kids into good behavior. Now, okay, so we've got scary helpers dressed in fur, and we've got competing St. Nicholas and Christkindl. Let's go to the Dutch colony of New Amsterdam, New Holland, in what's now New York. The Dutch send colonists to Manhattan and up the Hudson River Valley, and they bring with them the notion of St. Nicholas, or, as they would say in Dutch, Sinterklaas. So Sinterklaas is on American soil as a Christmas season gift bringer. And the Dutch, even when they're conquered by the English and New Amsterdam becomes New York, they keep up this notion. And it it exists in the folk memory of New York inhabitants. Right, now we're at about the year 1800. The American intellectual class is worried about how Christmas has declined. Christmas in the English-speaking world by 1800 had gone into a decline. Puritans, Calvinists hated it. They abolished it. New England wouldn't celebrate Christmas. Scotland wouldn't celebrate Christmas. And it had become kind of an outdoor, alcohol-fueled, rowdy adult time, kind of like New Year's Eve gone bad. And there were mobs in the streets of Boston and Philadelphia and New York at Christmas time, banging on pots and pans, shouldering decent citizens off the sidewalk, beating up on African Americans and immigrants, going after Catholics, disrupting church, behaving very badly. So a number of thinkers come up collectively, writers and poets and artists, come up with the notion of St. Nicholas, trying to educate the English-speaking America about this magical gift bringer who punishes bad little girls and boys and rewards the good. And they want to bring Christmas indoors, domesticate it, focus it on children, and reduce class tension and bad behavior. And there are a number of people in England, which has the same problem, and the United States who do this. Charles Dickens in England with his Christmas stories, and a couple of poets in New York who do it in 1821 and 1822. They conceive of St. Nicholas coming to American girls and boys in a sleigh drawn by reindeer. Now, the first poem is called A Children's Friend. That's where we know that the name Santa Claus is in operation, because it's written right across the guy's hat. He wears a fur hat. He's dressed with a fur robe, travels in a sleigh pulled by a single reindeer, and goes through the house, rewarding and punishing. A guy, an upper class fellow by the name of Clement Clark Moore, copies that poem, essentially steals the poem, and makes a much better poem out of it called The Night Before Christmas. And in this poem, he still calls the gift bringer St. Nicholas. But at this point, 1822, we can divorce the two characters, and he ceases to be a bishop. He ceases to come on December 6th, ceases to be sectarian, and is now somehow elfish. Moore talks about a right jolly old elf. And so from that point, the early 1820s, Santa Claus diverges, emerges from the rib, if you like, of St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas continues on his own merry way, still bringing presents to kids in the Netherlands and parts of Catholic Europe. And though we confuse the names, they're two separate creatures. And this is forgotten in the 20th century in Europe after World War II, where Santa Claus starts replacing the Christ child, the angels, St. Nicholas. So what we have in the last 20 years is a fight back demanding St. Nicholas retain his place and Santa Claus be given the boot. So there are places in the Netherlands where it's illegal to dress as Santa Claus until St. Nicholas has his day. He's come on St. Nicholas Day, he's appeared, he's given out his gifts, he goes away on December 6th. Okay, now you can pretend to be Santa Claus. So, and that's all over Europe. But there we have, in about a 15-minute lecture, the evolution of St. Nicholas, the evolution, the devolution, if you like, of Santa Claus, and the continued existence of two separate magical Christmas gift bringers.
Wow. Thank you so much. I didn't know at least half of that. The fact that manure was the punishment at one point. Very interesting. So back to the actual man, Nicholas, who became Saint Nicholas. His faith in Jesus as God was very important to him. Yes, he was imprisoned for his faith. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we are told that he was one of those who was imprisoned in the great persecution that occurred just after 300. Both the Eastern and the Western Emperor went after Christianity quite severely. And it's only in the decade later where Constantine becomes emperor and he has Christian leanings that the church is able to come out and practice openly.
Do we know how long he was imprisoned for, or not quite? I know, it was way back in the day.
No, okay. We're not really sure. There's very little contemporary evidence of St. Nicholas. Most of what we think we know about him comes out of stories that were written later.
I see. Is there any real evidence that he disguised himself and gave gifts to kids, or is that sort of that fabrication that came around 1000 to 1200 kind of thing?
Within a couple hundred years, he has the story, the reputation as this magical gift bringer. He doesn't disguise himself. He comes at night. He tries not to be discovered. But eventually, on the third night, the father discovers him. And this was when he was a young man. He came from a wealthy family. We have very silly stories about St. Nicholas as a child. When he was born, I think he stood up and announced the Christian creed. And I think he refused to take his mother's milk on the Sabbath day. He was a very, very precocious little lad. We may not necessarily believe these stories, but they certainly tell us what the early Middle Ages thought about his character.
Yeah, and incredibly fascinating. I only have one more kind of thought, and maybe I'm wrong even on this. Please help me out because you are the historian. Why has no one made a film yet about this actual man, Saint Nicholas? Or maybe there has been. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I've been in a couple of movies with. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they're out there, and a number of good books too. if I can plug my own,
Please, yes.
called Santa Claus: A Biography, begins with a story of St. Nicholas. There's lots of other good ones out there. Uh,
Fantastic.
a lot of Christian parents are uneasy about the whole Santa Claus phenomenon for a number of reasons. And one of the things I do when I encounter this is say, well, you've got St. Nicholas as a gift bringer. And why not run him up the flagpole and see if the kids salute? St. Nicholas was one of a number of magical gift-bringing saints. Um, St. Martin was one, St. Catherine for girls, but they've tended to fade away, and we've kept St. Nicholas. So you'll see him in a lot of Dutch churches, in even in Canada, churches that have a connection to the Netherlands, and worthy of consideration, I think.
Absolutely. Well, I have been truly educated and fascinated with you this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And we'll let people know about your book as well.
Well, thank you. Okay. Merry
Definitely
Christmas.
appreciate it. And Merry Christmas to you.